I'm Adam Lifshitz. I work at Condé Nast. I'm the Senior Product Director of our subscriptions platform. We handle everything that is the end-to-end life cycle of a subscriber on how we acquire them, how we process their payments, how we bill them, and how we manage their retention space and everything thereafter. I think I'll start by saying that we've shifted our approach from being a deals and steals kind of old school marketing of like, let's just attract you with a premium and a low priced offer. Because we realize whilst that might get you through the door, it might not be the thing that keeps you there, because a tote bag is a once-off gift. Once you have it, it's like, what then? You got what you came for. So we are changing the narrative to make sure that you're coming for, let's call it, the right reasons. And in our books, the right reasons is really the value of what the subscription is, and it's the value of not just the power of our brands, but what each of them entail in their own special ways. So for example, Bon Appetit is a leader in the food industry, and it's renowned for its recipes that are very unique that you can't really find elsewhere, and the editorial voice that we get and the amazing talent that we have. So we want to make sure people are subscribing to that, and we change our narrative to communicate that over and above the package in which you buy the subscription, right? The package is really how much the thing costs, and obviously we want to make it enticing to our customers, but it's not the thing in itself that needs to lock the sale. I use the example of the New Yorker with the tote bag because I think it's a pretty common one. It's something we've dealt with for a while, where if you walk around New York, like 1 in 3 people you'll see are walking around with the New Yorker tote bag. The brand is infamous for the tote bag, and we've made so many variations of a limited edition one. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of it. We know it's an important part and people associate with the New Yorker, but we also want to make sure that's not the only reason they're subscribing to the New Yorker. So whilst we still include in a lot of our offerings, it's still very much a part of what the subscription includes. We are not emphasizing it as much as we perhaps used to, and rather we shift to the conversation to what I've said previously, which is how do we communicate the value of our brands in the form of what we call reasons to believe, and they differ brand by brand. So in the New York examples, reasons to believe might be the amazing games that it offers that maybe some of our other brands don't offer. It's of course the journalism. Every single one of the brands, you're signing up for the journalism in that space. Vogue is the leader in fashion, Bon Appetit is the leader in food, Wired is a leader in technology, New Yorker is a leader of like everything from current affairs to politics to expose stories. So we want to make sure that comes front and center, and that's what people are subscribing to. And if that doesn't appeal to everyone, that's also okay, but I'd rather attract more of those people, because if you're subscribing for those reasons, the likelihood of you staying is a lot higher than someone who's just coming for the quick buck and the $6 subscription. So it's still work in progress. I wouldn't say we've nailed it, but we've certainly started to shift the narrative and our approach towards that. I want to be clear that when I say it's less is more, it's not that of course we all want more. It's not that I'm trying to reduce the number of people we're bringing in. In a perfect world, I want to bring as many people as I can. But it's rather a response to a reality that is unfortunately out of our control, that less people are coming through to our properties because of factors outside of our immediate control, and other publishers and other companies face the same. And I was referring to, by means of example, traffic from the big social media platforms and certainly from Google. So if that's the constraint we've been dealt, of like, you're getting less. So now the question shifts, like, okay, I might not be able to change that amount of people. I can go out and spend more money to acquire more people, which we do. That's one tactic of how we combat the drop in organic traffic, by trying to spend more dollars on acquiring, bringing people to our platforms. But it's very much focused on like, okay, now we really got to be intentional and tactical on what do we do with those that do come, that do still come. Because it's not like we've lost everyone. There's still a great deal that comes to any of our brands. But we have to be more strategic, because I've mentioned it in one of my panels that we have multiple revenue streams. A lot of companies have multiple revenue streams. Some companies have decided to focus on maybe 1 or 2, or have picked a path on what's going to be the main thing. But in reality, a lot of them are trying to balance multiple revenue streams. It's something that we learn over time. It's not something that you just nail and then that's it. You take a step back. I think you continuously try to optimize that, learn more about the users, figure out your sweet spots, and be prepared to change it because users are going to change and behavior is going to change. And so it's an ongoing journey, but it's more important now than it's ever has been. I will say there's actually been a change in both our acquisition approach or acquisition strategy, as well as how we engage them over the course of their subscription as well, throughout the entire process. And there's some traits that change in the subscriber behavior. They're way more savvy, but they also know what to look out for. And I think we've done a lot of user research in this space, and there are new traits and trends that are coming up in what a consumer is expecting from you that we have to respond to. One just thing that we've been very proud of, but also something that we've spent more time and effort recently, is around trust and transparency. That can take form in how you communicate the terms of the subscription at the point of acquisition. So being very clear on the renewal terms, being very clear that you can cancel or pause at any time, being very clear how much you're going to be billed now, how much you're going to be billed later, when is later, and all those things to make sure, because they want to know that you're not trying to trap them with a specific intro offer. That is a big problem in the industry right now. We actually avoid trying to make it difficult. It's also, I think it's a little evasive, because your ability to retain people shouldn't come with a cheap tactic of making it difficult for them to cancel. Your ability to retain people should be more focused on like making sure they want to stay. And if they don't want to stay, give them a clear path to get out. That's both from a regulatory perspective, but it's also because it's the right thing to do. It's the ethical approach to business, which we take great pride in doing correctly. So we've been applying a lot more, playing into this idea that customers look for trust and transparency, and they want to know upfront and during the course of their subscription that they are in control of the subscription, and there's no like hidden agenda, there's no tricks that are happening, there's ways out of this thing. Because ultimately, think about what you're doing. You're asking them for a commitment. This is not a one-time purchase. That's a different purchase than saying buying a cup of coffee. If I don't like the coffee, great, it's over. I'm not going to get charged for this again in a week's time or a month's time. A subscription is a commitment. So if you ask for a commitment, I want to know that I can control it, and I'm not tied to terms and conditions that I didn't know about it. The second thing is also being conscious of what's happening in the environment and in the economy, and realizing, putting ourselves in a user's shoes, that money is tighter than it has been. Hopefully that changes over time and comes back to a place of more comfort. But the reality is money is tight, inflation is high, people have a lot of subscriptions. You can't just bombard them with more things. You have to sell harder and you have to sell a little smarter and respond to that. So one thing we've done is also changed, not necessarily, again, to be clear, not necessarily dropped our prices, but provided more digestible ways of subscribing to our products. That might come in a form of shorter subscription cadences, so maybe monthly subscriptions instead of annual ones feel more digestible, and it's month to month, so I can get out on month 3 instead of pay for a whole year, and what if I don't like it? Or alternatively, stuff that is higher priced than others, like say a New Yorker subscription, we communicate in a way that is a bit more digestible and a bit more comparable, which is, maybe we express it as a monthly cost as opposed to an annual. Even though it's billed annually, we express it in something that is a bit easier to digest and compare it to other areas of your life. And that's been a big shift that actually worked really well for us. That is another thing we've also added. It used to be a binary situation. It's like you either subscribe, or you're either an active subscriber or you're not. You either cancel or that's it. And in reality, there's a lot of nuances in between. Some people are happy to stay subscribed, but money is tighter than usual. They might want to downgrade to a cheaper offer, but they still want to pay you something. They still want to stay in the loop. So there's that. Some people are traveling. I'm going away for a month. I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to pause it. I don't want to pay for something I'm not going to use for a month. But if I don't have that option, then I'm just going to cancel. And then the onus is on us to then convert them again later, which is a lot harder than just resuming a pause subscription. So yeah, by introducing more ways to control your subscription that are more suitable for different use cases, as opposed to just doing a blanket rule of all or nothing, has allowed us to also deflect some of those cancellations. Again, using Chargebee Retention has been a great asset and toolkit in making that possible. But I think you touch on a very important trend that is beyond, maybe a little bit beyond just retention, which is consumer habits changes, full stop. For a variety of factors, many of which are out of our control. And we can be rigid with how they engage with us and how we charge them and bill them and like how we essentially monetize them. Or we can try to be a little bit more adaptive. And I think it comes from a place of empathy. And maybe this is my role as product, where product leaders typically think we put ourselves in our shoes of our users. Like, what would I like when I part away with my money? The more control you can give me, the more flexibility and adaptability to my situations, the more likely I will stay with you, because you're giving me ways to stay with you that are not so binary. And again, I think we still have ways to go there. I think a lot of companies have ways to go there, because I think a lot still operating in this pause is a nice feature, but it's really just pause or cancel for the most part. I think there's still more ways we can explore as an industry to be more adaptive. The idea of micropayments has come up. Like, maybe I just want to read this in. I'm not ready to commit, and like, play around with trials. Give me some time back to love the brand again. Free time back. What about a free trial in the middle of my subscription? Those concepts haven't been like explored so much yet, but who knows? I think that they all come under the same theme of being more flexible. You have to remember that our business, everything I've been speaking about so far, I'm representing the work of multiple brands. So it's pretty wide scale. When we operate at that scale, any kind of these initiatives, anything that I do that moves the needle by a basis point, 1%, is significant. But when we started introducing Chargebee Retention, where we could actually create targeted experiences that have to specific audiences, not just per brand, but within the brand, specific audiences. And even with like basic functionality, not even using the full gambit of everything that it has to offer. And again, I said, I'm the type that I like to isolate the variables. If I try to put everything that is possible in one go, I don't actually know which part of it made the difference. So even just starting with, call it the information experience. All I'm doing there is like, I'm not even giving you offers. I'm not even giving you the option to pause. I'm purely giving you the reasons to stay and seeing what that does. And that gave us a bump. Already out the box, first thing we put out there. Ran it for a bit, ran on one brand. So I'm also careful with my brands. I do it one by one, because although you can have some learnings, they tend to behave differently. Some things are common, some things like react differently. But even just starting with one brand with the simplest of experiences, we saw a bump. A bump in a sense of like we deflected a certain percentage of cancellation. I don't remember at the time, but significant enough to make a point. I want to say maybe it was like in the 8 to 10% region. So I was like, great, that's a good start. It's not zero. Remember, we started at zero at that point. And then we started experimenting, okay, that's my control. Let me add another layer. Now I'm going to add an experience that is literally exactly the same. It's the same copy, it's the same creative, it's the same branding, but this one has the pause capability. What does that do? That one has 1% higher than the first one. So I'm like, cool, new control. You add another layer. What happens if I add a discount offer of a low value? I think we even started with the higher value, but then turn it down to see like we find a sweet spot. But that's basically been our approach. And then I take that and I do the same for the next brand and the next brand and the next brand. And that's what we started, I believe, in, I want to say July last year. So it's been a journey brand by brand to get it in there. And now we're at the point where all of our brands that have a digital subscription offering run through this process to some degree or another. And the collective impact of averaging, and again, they differ between brand and brand. That's why I gave like the 50 to 20%, and like we have to look at deflection rate and save rates relative to them, but it's, it's more than 10. And I think 10% in that world is already so significant. And I know we have ways to go. I know we have ways to even improve it beyond that. But it meant a great deal. And I think the way it shows beyond a percentage point in revenue, and Chargebee Retention luckily gives us these numbers, you look at retained revenue. And that's somewhat exponential, because if that person left at that point in time, you can't outright say they may have come back. So it's not like all revenue would have been lost, but let's assume for a second that it did. By deflecting them at that point in time and actually completely save them, so to speak, after whatever their watch period is, 30 days or so, that retained revenue is attributed to this thing that we did together to like stop them from happening. And that number grows exponentially, because for every renewal they'll have, it comes back to this moment. And I think that's super interesting. And it's like, we see it as incremental revenue. It's revenue that we would have probably lost otherwise. Yeah.